got to talk about Dana Bash and what's going to happen tonight. What are your expectations, Senator?
Well, I know what she should do. I mean, I don't think Harris is entitled to the presumption that she wants the American people to know what she really thinks. I don't think Bash should treat this interview the way it should be would have been treated if it had been given 3 or 4 weeks ago. I think she should go because the way Harris has acted is an offense against the press and the public and the process. And she ought to drill into that. And I would cross-examine her on that. I would ask her why she's hiding. I would ask her why she brought Waltz to that interview. I would ask her why she's flip-flopped on so many positions with no explanation. And I would ask her why she believes the American people should now trust anything she says. I don't think Dana is going to do that. I think she's going to ask a number of tough questions along the lines that you've outlined. But I think it's a mistake. I mean, again, it's your business, not mine. But I mean, the way Harris has treated the press and the public over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think that should be a major subject of the interview. That's what I would expect if I was in that position. That's what I'd be preparing for.
Now, Jim, for the people who are just joining the show, I've got a new Fox News column up with 15 questions I'd like Dana to ask. She is a professional. I believe she will be fair. I believe she will be tough. But among these are, if China attempts to invade Taiwan, will American military force be used to defend the island nation? We need to know what she thinks about that, don't we, Senator?
Right. And all these foreign policy questions, and again, you're the journalist, not me. I would try and get at presidential level questions, which is what is America's interest in defending Taiwan? How important is that? Uh, because the question of whether she should use military force to defend Taiwan is a legitimate presidential candidate. I mean, if you ask this of President Trump, I doubt he would give you a specific answer because you don't want to signal to the adversary if you think you're going to be president exactly what you're going to do. But I would ask the
That's
strategic
what
question.
he says. That's exactly
Yeah,
what he says. And you know what? That's a presidential answer. But I don't know
I mean,
that she can give that.
well, it would be interesting to see what she does. I would go in the Middle East. All your questions are good ones, but I would get into the broader strategic question of, look, are you going to continue the Obama Biden policy, which we're going to assume was your policy because you've been vice president, but are you going to continue trying to approach Iran as if they could be a responsible regional player and a member of a partnership with the United States? Because that's the underlying problem.
That's better than
with,
mine.
with
That's a better question than mine. Because the illusion of Iran as a reasonable participant in the international order is so ill-founded, and also the sunk costs are so enormous in the Democratic Party that she'll have to say yes, and trying to explain that to America, it won't work, will it?
Well, I'd be interested. My guess is that she would not immediately latch on to the implications of the question. I mean, the first thing you would learn is she thinking on this kind of a strategic level? And I'd be interested to hear what she said. But all of
Jim,
Biden's terribleness. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
got to ask you this. I'm really worried about this. I've never been worried about a Democrat winning before. I thought, okay, if Barack Obama wins, that'll be good for American history. He's run as a moderate. I mean, he went very far left and he did some great damage. I wasn't, I didn't want Hillary to win because of the Supreme Court, but the country would have retained its superpower status. I am afraid if Kamala Harris wins, after 4 years, we will have lost superpower status and we won't be able to get it back. Am I being an alarmist? Because I think that's how much damage she will do.
Well, yeah, but I'm focusing on a more concrete concern, which is okay. We have, after 4 years of Biden, the biggest war in Europe since World War II, the biggest war in the Middle East since 1973. There is an unacceptably high risk, and I'm being measured in saying this, that if we elect her, we're going to have a war in the Indo-Pacific. And it is very likely that if that happens, it will not be a war where we're arguing over whether to send artillery shells to Taiwan, the way we've done with Ukraine. That's highly likely to be a war where we get attacked, our forces get attacked, and it's also there's a high risk that the homeland will get attacked in the space architecture or through cyber. This is what people when they war game this, this is something they have to take into account. And in other words, we're looking at escalating armed conflict in the Indo-Pacific. At least there's an
That's
unacceptably
very
high risk of
sobering.
that.
That's very sobering. I would like to hear her talk about that. Commander in Chief questions is all that she should be asked. And that's one of them. Is it a fair question to ask about military recruitment? Because I think we have a crisis on our hands that's extraordinary. I think she'll make it worse. I don't know who wants her to be their commander in chief. Do you?
Yeah, it's a fair question to ask because it's such a crisis. I think in a normal campaign, I mean, it would be a fair question to ask, but I think to expect a person running for president in a normal situation to understand recruitment policy and talk with any in any specifics about it, I think is asking too much. But in this context, because we have the worst recruiting crisis that I can remember, particularly in the Army, yeah, I think it's a very legitimate question. And the problem she would have, of course, is that in order to fix the crisis, and Mike Waltz talked about this yesterday, we need to get rid of we need to professionalize, military policy at the highest level. I mean, we have highly professional, competent servicemen and women, but the policies, the DEI, the vaccine policies, I mean, it's turning off exactly the kind of people that you want to recruit in the military. So I think it's very fair, and I think the answer is to do what Reagan did. I mean, to go in and concentrate on building a warfighting force with high standards for everybody, including the generals and flags, by the way, and that includes physical standards, to have priorities, to insist on plans from the chiefs to accomplish those priorities. And then if they can't execute the plan, to get people who can. That's how Reagan built the military. And I think if we have the right people at the top of the Pentagon, and I'm certain we will, if Trump gets elected, I think you'll see the recruiting crisis ease pretty quickly.
Jim, my last question. I have great confidence in Dana Bash. I worked with her long enough, did 4 debates with her. I was with her at the RNC this past spring or the spring of last year when we were pitching debates. And I've said, you guys can trust Dana Bash as a professional. She did a fine job with Jake Tapper in the first debate. Do you trust her tonight to push hard on questions that Americans need answered by Kamala Harris, not by Tim Walz?
Well, based on what I've observed, and especially because you vouched for her, yeah, I expect she's going to ask some tough questions. What I don't expect is that, and I got to be upfront about it, and I'm sure she's a fine journalist. I don't expect her to treat Harris and cross-examine Harris the way she would cross-examine, for example, me, if I had done the things that Harris had done to snub the press, the public, and the people in the 4 weeks since then. I mean, this is an enormous foul that Harris, a foul against the process that she's committed. And
well, you're really mad about this. You're really angry about this.
Because look, she's running for the most important job in the country under circumstances where she was I don't want to say unknown, but I mean, she wasn't liked, and she was part of an administration that the public's viewed has failed. And now for a month, she's gone into hiding. Her first interview, she's bringing Tim Walz with her. And you're right, it's obviously a security blanket. It'd be one thing if she'd done 10 or 12 interviews and then she wanted to bring Walz. That would be fine, okay? But
you know that Mark Levin, our friend Mark Levin, taped a 2-hour interview with Donald Trump that will air on Sunday night. Can you imagine Kamala Harris doing a 2-hour interview with anybody? I mean, Rachel Maddow, she would not make it through the 2 hours, Jim Talent. I don't think.
Well, I got to be fair. Donald Trump has energy I don't have. I wouldn't, if I was in the middle of a campaign like this, I wouldn't do 2 hours. I'd probably do 20 minutes with you the way Dave McCormick just did. But no, I don't blame her for not doing that.